We're going to talk to Tasha about our poll question. Yep. After the Texans traded for Stephon Diggs today, which team is more likely to make the Super Bowl next? The Packers or the Texans? 63% of people say the Packers, 37% say Texans, which, again, for my, obviously we're in Wisconsin scale, that feels like a 50-50 poll because
take that for that.
There's a lot of homerism there. I understand the KC argument that the AFC is tougher to get through.
Yep.
But I think the Texans have a better roster, and on a developmental scale, C.J. Stroud could be poised to end up being a better quarterback than Jordan Love because C.J. Stroud, what do we always say with young players? What are we all saying about the Packers' young players right now, all the rookies? Well, they're going to be better in their second year because they don't have to deal with all the rookie draft stuff and trying to learn everything on the fly and adjust to the lifestyle. Well, that was C.J. Stroud's rookie year, and he took the team to the playoffs and put up nearly identical numbers or close numbers to Jordan Love. And now C.J. Stroud should be ready to make that big sophomore jump that we're all expecting Packer players to make.
Yeah,
rightfully so.
So, I mean, when you look at the offense, it's probably a toss-up at quarterback, right? Stroud versus Love. I'll just call it a toss-up. At running back, you'll take Jacobs over Mixon. At wide receiver, you're probably taking the let's call it the thruple, the threesome of Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell over Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs.
I would like to point out
Reed.
that Joe Mixon was a more productive running back than Josh Jacobs, I think, as a receiver and running back last year.
But the year prior, Josh Jacobs was a first-team All-Pro.
True, but in 2 years before, the year prior to that, Joe Mixon was a hell of a player
But
again.
Jacobs is younger also. I mean, he's got more tread.
How old is Jacobs?
24, 25, 26 maybe? Just turned 26, I think.
Yeah, Joe Mixon's 27. So, again, they're closer than you think.
They are close, actually. It is a good point. But nonetheless.
I'll give you Jacobs. But my thing with Jacobs is that I'll just ask this question. How much better are the Packers this year based on it? Not assuming, because we'll just assume every team is going to grow at the same rate. Mm-hmm. So the Texans' young players are going to grow at the same rate the Packers grow at. So before the draft, which team got substantially better? Jacobs is an upgrade over Jones, but not a massive one. Jones is a hell of a player.
It's the Texans, given that we can't underrate the Danielle Hunter signing, which you brought up earlier. Now, the Xavier McKinney signing for the Packers, I would say equally as important.
That's very good.
Right? Just obviously a very different position. Offensively, when you add Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon, you're just going to get better than a team that still is dealing with a bunch of second- and third-year guys.
I mean, those two moves right there push to the Texans.
Yeah,
I'll give you the Hunter and McKinney washout.
Yeah, I'm curious in terms of offensive line. Like I admittedly, I don't know much about the Texans' offensive line. The Packers have some holes to fill, and I assume they will do that via the draft. So I'd say more likely to get to a Super Bowl, I'd probably vote Packers because of the Chiefs factor. There's just better teams in the AFC, but the Texans are going to be in the mix. But when you think about Baltimore and Buffalo and Cincinnati, if Burrow is healthy all year, it's a tough division or a tough conference. Their division just happens to be the easiest.
The Texans, much like the Packers, I don't know the Packers number off the top of my head, but the Texans have 21 combined picks over the next 3 drafts. They have 8 picks in just this draft alone.
I guess the Packers have more than that because they have 11 this year.
True, but I mean, I'm just saying the Texans, they're not thin on picks.
No.
And they have 8 this year alone.
And this is after the draft or after the trade for Diggs? Do you know if that number is updated or not? I mean, regardless,
they didn't give up a pick in this year's draft. That was 2025. Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe they have 20 picks over the next few years, but they are, and the Packers at 11 picks is kind of worthless outside unless they're trading them. Like you're not going to add 11 players to your roster or even to your
right.
So I mean, like 8's probably too many. Like the number of players out of a draft that you're actually going to be able to roster, best case scenario is probably 6. And for the Packers and the Texans, that number's going to get smaller because they're good teams. So that number's probably going to be even smaller than that. You put a few on the practice squad. And so we don't know which ones are going to hit. I don't think it's great the Packers have 11 picks, but I think the biggest advantage of those is they're going to probably package those. Hopefully. If I'm a Packers fan, I want them to package those picks somewhere to go get someone with some conviction, whether it's in the first or second round and be like, I got to have this guy. You have all these picks. That's why you have them, is to go say, you know what? I need this player, and I need them badly. Like they could go, you know what? Rome Odunze's fallen to 8. I need him.
Rome Odunze meeting with the Bears tomorrow.
He is. Malik Neighbor. Marvin Harrison slips to 6. I need Marvin.
Yeah.
And this is the part that kind of, and I get the Packer fans, and right, you're just going to love what your team does. I understand that. But it is the outlier. It is not the norm consistently to be able to win without a premier wide receiver. Because I asked this question earlier today on my own Twitter, @Jim Rutledge, should the Packers trade for T. Higgins? 76% of people said no. And that to me is such a large number. T. Higgins is an incredibly productive player.
Yeah.
He is in his prime. You're not at this would be a better addition, in my opinion, than adding Stephon Diggs or Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen went to Chicago to go play with Caleb Williams, and the Texans added Diggs to play with C.J. Stroud. Adding T. Higgins, that's the conventional wisdom. Like the Packers are bucking conventional wisdom at the moment because you know what you can make a case for? Jordan Love up and down, not his fault. He just needs a more consistent guy that he knows he always can. That's always going to be open. It is not a. It is the norm. The Chiefs have Kelsey. They've always had Kelsey.
Yep.
They lost Tyreek Hill, but what did they do when they lost Tyreek Hill? They did go try to get MVS, and they signed Juju Smith-Schuster for a year, and those guys worked out and it worked out fine. This year they went and they let MVS go. They're bringing in Hollywood Brown from the Cardinals, so they're not. They don't go out and say, and they drafted Rashid Rice. They don't just say, oh, we're just going to roll with it.
What's Rashid Rice?
Well, that's a whole other thing. Yes, that is awful. What's going on with him? But
Might
then
not work out. Yeah.
You look at the. They still made the effort for it. They got the Super Bowl. They made the pick. Yeah. So the 49ers, they had Ayuk. They have Samuel. McCaffrey's a weapon for the Tyreek Hill type guy for the 49ers. Like all these teams say, we need a guy to unlock the full offense. Like you look at the premier team, the Eagles, young QB, A.J. Brown, everyone, Tua, Tyreek Hill. That is the conventional wisdom. It is not, let's just throw a bunch of guys out there and hope they all develop. If the Packers are serious about trying to win a Super Bowl in this Jordan Love window, you could get T. Higgins and probably structure his contract that his big money lands before these young guys get paid. Like you could get him, give up draft capital, and build his contract that you can work around Jordan Love's deal because some of those young guys you might like at receiver or other positions, so they're not going to get paid for a little bit.
So I get the concept of the argument, right? Like, yeah, adding T. Higgins is just an upgrade. When you look at what Houston did, they had two breakout receivers last year in Dell and Collins, and adding a guy like Stephon Diggs, who's a bona fide all-pro option, it increases, the potency of their offense. I get that argument every day of the week. But I lean more to the school of, hey, this Brian Gutekunst youth movement / Matt LaFleur not having a true number one receiver might be beneficial for their offense. Because I don't think that, you're necessarily targeting Dontavian Wicks, and saying, hey, we got to double team him all game. Or you're looking at a Jaden Reed and saying, hey, we need to double team him. Where the Texans are subscribing to the school of, hey, man, you can double team Stephon Diggs, but we still got Dell, we still got Collins, we still got Dalton Schultz. We're going to beat you by a million, death by a million paper cuts. Where the Packers can kind of do the same thing, but they don't have a bona fide stud. They don't have a bona fide all-pro. And I think that can work too.
But it hasn't.
It worked. I mean, you point out Kelsey, but other than him, the Chiefs had nobody.
But that's my point. Like, you still had Kelsey. Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
Right, but I'm more looking at wide receiver, running back, where the Packers are stacked at those positions with young guys who are only going to get better.
Okay, but the Chiefs still looked at it and they won the Super Bowl and said we needed someone else. Like, we had to work too hard to get points last year. So how they added Hollywood Brown. The Bills they moved away from Diggs. I'm guessing they're going to add a receiver in this draft, but they have Gabe Davis and they have Dalton.
They no longer have Gabe Davis.
They don't.
He signed with the Jaguars.
So they do need to build out.
They have Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, though.
Yes, and they do need to build out their wide receiver.
They'll draft wide receiver.
I guarantee they're going to draft wide receivers in this draft. The Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, and then Jalen Waddle. The Chiefs obviously just added Hollywood Brown. The Raiders are keeping Devontae Adams because they are bringing in young QBs, so they're like, we want to keep Devontae around. The Browns went and got Jerry Jeudy, right?
I believe that's correct.
And then the Ravens, they've been very vocal about needing to add players. They added players who have gotten Zay Flowers, would have been the guy that really has made a big thing for them offensively last year. They went and drafted him. They said, we need to get a guy. And then they have Mark Andrews. They have the tight end. The Texans obviously just added. So I'm just looking at the top teams. They just added their guy. The Jaguars had Calvin Ridley for Trevor Lawrence. They let that deal, but they went and got their guy. So the best teams in football, the AFC side of it, went and added a guy. The Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb?
They have CeeDee Lamb's their star.
Yes, and then the Eagles have a couple guys. The Giants Brown, right now, they say, Giants, what are they going to do? They're going to draft one of those wide receivers. They need to add to it. The Cardinals, they have Kyler Murray. What are they going to do? They're going to go draft Marvin Harrison. The Seahawks have DK Metcalf. The Rams.
And Tyler Lockett.
what's the
Cooper
guy?
Kupp?
No,
Puka Nacua.
Puka Nacua.
Greatest name in the
49ers added some
NFL.
players. Lions have St. Brown. The Vikings have Justin Jefferson and the tight end they got from the
T.J. Hockenson.
Yeah,
And they have the young stud,
Jordan
Boston
Addison.
College.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
So that's
USC,
Zay Flowers with the Boston College. We have thrown out a lot of names.
Jordan Addison. But my point is, all these teams, like the conventional wisdom is, now the Packers, the case would be, we think one of these guys is going to break out next year.
3 of these guys.
Right. They're
Right,
the ones
because when Christian Watson's on the field, you can tell the difference he makes vertically.
But he's
Dontavian Wicks is the best true route runner. He could be the true Davante Adams type. Jaden Reed's a weapon. They got 2 young tight ends who both had flashy plays and starts and games last year.
So the question is, are they the one team that's figured out where they've drafted all these guys and it's all going to click, or it's going to be
that's clearly
these guys
the hope.
are all.
And I understand hope is not a strategy, but that's clearly the hope.
But wouldn't it make more? Wouldn't you just want to? If you're trying to win, and we're going to talk to Tyler in a little bit here. If the stakes are high and you need to now win because the success you had last year, they're no longer the plucky, young, fun team. They need to go win. Wouldn't you want to stack the odds in your favor?
I don't know that T. Higgins raises the bar quite like Stephon Diggs does. Right, Stephon Diggs is a much better wide receiver than T. Higgins is. He's what, like a 4-time All-Pro?
4-time All-Pro, but he's also 6 years older.
Yeah, T. Higgins is 25.
60 years old.
No, he's 30. He's 30. He's not in NFL years.
Halfway there.
Based on his healthy seasons, T. Higgins is going to give you 75 catches for 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns.
And that was as the number 2 to Jamar Chase.
Other than his rookie year, yeah.
Yeah. When Joe Burrow was not healthy.
Correct. But he was the only receiver there.
But you average out his stats. Last year, I don't think he was healthy for the whole year. You average out his stats, and he's going to give you 15 yards a catch.
Yeah, I mean, obviously health plays a factor too. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Because I think when the way the Packers are viewing it, which I assume the Texans are too after year one of C.J. Stroud, is, okay, you have a perennial Pro Bowler quarterback, right? So you have somebody that is going to raise the floor for you no matter what the pieces are in your offense. When you look at Jordan Love, he clearly elevated these young guys' play. He did, right? When you look at Jaden Reed, who had no experience. When you look at Dontavian Wicks, who had no experience. When you look at Bo Melton, who had no experience. He raised those guys' games. Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. I almost called him Tucker Musgrave because we were stuck on country music earlier. Shout out to Casey. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, but I can say the Packers' strategy is in good shape. Right? Like, this is clearly not a team that's going to fall by the wayside just because they aren't going to trade for T. Higgins. They have a ton of talent and a ton of upside on their offense.
I just feel like, and Matt's a big part of this, we're going to be at the end of the year be like, man, they were just a guy short.
Well,
like, this is always
is
always their strategy, and it's always like the young guys will just come through.
But this strategy is a lot different than like Davante Adams' years, right? Like, because that last year of Rodgers and Adams.
Where did they get with Davante Adams? Where were they consistently when they had Rodgers and Davante
divisional
Adams?
round of the championship? I agree with you, Jim. But my point is,
what is the goal?
Last year, of course, the Super Bowl, the 21-22 year, 22 playoffs, 21 football season. They had nobody behind Adams. Where that's not the case with these teams, right? You have Bo Melton games last year.
Here's what I don't like. I don't like whether any team I'm rooting for. I don't like my team thinking that they're smarter than everyone else, that they're going to buck conventional wisdom. That more often than not fails. And here's my point for it. I get your T. Higgins thing. The Packers have the draft capital and the young players in place to take a swing and miss.
The case I will make, Jim. The case I will make. The Patriots won 6 Super Bowls. Name the best receivers from those teams.
Randy Moss, Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez.
Tight end.
Amazing.
Did Randy Moss win a Super Bowl with them?
He might not have won.
He did not, but Julian Edelman won a few.
Julian Edelman.
Wes Welker. But those guys put up 100 and some catches every year.
But were those Hall of Fame receivers?
Who was their quarterback?
Tom Brady.
Thank you. This is Rutledge and Hamilton.
Jordan loves Tom Brady. What do you mean?